What is Harry Potter? Who is Harry Potter? Why am I speaking in this way? So, about 2 years ago, I received a GameCube from one of my mom's friends. And with that GameCube, it came with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So I remember trying it once, and I remember it being quite fun. But then I neglected to continue to play the game, and then I stopped. And then I waited until a year to actually finally play it, which is why I'm making this video right now. And to be honest, I've never been a Harry Potter fan my whole life. I tried to get into it. I remember the first time I was exposed to Harry Potter was when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I was at a friend's house, and he was watching The Sorcerer's Stone, the very first movie of the franchise. In The Sorcerer's Stone, there was a Quidditch match going on, and I thought that was probably the only cool scene in there, but everything else was kind of like, eh. I guess growing up as a kid, I just didn't like how slow the pacing was in the Harry Potter movies. I was more of like an in-your-face kind of action-y person. Because of the way the storytelling was, I didn't particularly find it appealing. And it's not like I thought Harry Potter was bad because of that. It just didn't draw me for whatever reason. I also remember watching the trailers that would come out on TV and in between my Cartoon Network segments. Sometimes watching those trailers made me scared. And it's just because I didn't really understand Harry Potter at the time. And before you start to think, but Ninja Bread, you didn't even give it a chance, man. The thing is, I did. In college, I remembered that there was an ABC Family marathon for Harry Potter. And I tried to sit through the whole thing, and by the time I reached the 4th or 5th movie, I fell asleep. I don't even remember most of the context of those movies. But after playing this game and watching Goblet of Fire all throughout, because I watched the movie right after I beat the game so I could understand the context of the game that I just beat, my perception of Harry Potter has completely been forgiven. Changed even.
Ronald Weasley.
Let me just start off by saying that upon playing this game the first time, I had fun. It's not a bad game. And for a game from 2005, it definitely gives you that old feeling of playing a game that was from the 2000s. However, and I say that as a strong however, even though this game isn't that bad, it's still one of the jankiest games that I've ever played. And unfortunately, I didn't have a capture card to actually record my gameplay. So at some point in the future, that will change, but for now, I have to borrow footage from other long plays to describe what I'm doing. I will give credit to other YouTube channels that have recorded long plays of the game. The beginning of the game starts off with Harry, Hermione, and Ron going to the Quidditch Cup World Finals, and upon arrival to the campsite next to the finals, they get ravaged by Death Eaters. The Death Eaters are the followers of Lord Voldemort, and in this level, you're just basically escaping the level. Nothing crazy. What's dumb about this level, though, is that you don't even fight the Death Eaters. They cast spells, and you don't even do anything against them. You just cast spells against random creatures. Okay, so the next level, which is next level, the next level is a tutorial level where Harry, Hermione, and Ron learn from Professor Moody, the guy with the weird eye-looking thing. In this level, you learn 3 basic spells. You learn Accio, which allows you to pull and draw objects closer to you. You learn Wingardium Leviosa, and you learned the Jinx spell, which is the attack spell. Wingardium Leviosa.
It's Leviosa. Ah, Leviosa.
Remember old meme? Anyone? Old meme? What's kind of funny about this level is that you repeat it twice with different contexts, but the cutscenes are animated exactly the same in both instances. In other words, when you go back into the same level with Professor Moody, you get a different dialogue, but the cutscene is animated the exact same way that it was when you first entered the level.
Wondering why I brought you here, are you?
This is where you learn how to defend yourselves.
Get to it! And remember, constant vigilance. Potter, if you're to survive the Triwizard Tournament, I suggest you start collecting Triwizard shields. And remember, constant vigilance.
Constant vigilance. The nice thing about it, though, is that these cutscenes are actually animated really well. But the problem with this game is that these cutscenes are so far few in between that it makes me wish that they utilize the 3D animation more in this game. Because you get 2D cutscenes in between levels in this game, but they're not really completely animated. They're just kind of like picture frames that are transitioned like from one to another. And so maybe they didn't want to include too many cutscenes to lengthen the game, but it would have been cool to see more of that. Anyway, once you complete this level, you move on to the next level, which is the Hogwarts exterior. The main mission of the game in each level is to collect these really huge shields that will allow you to complete the level and move on to the next one. But when you complete certain levels, sometimes you can't progress to the next level unless you collect a certain amount of shields. And that means that sometimes you have to go back to previous levels in order to collect extra shields that you might have missed, or shields that weren't available to you before, because once you complete a certain level the first time, certain areas within that level will finally open up. And this is a good thing because it promotes the player to go back to certain levels and revisit them and discover areas that they didn't know that were there before. And Harry Potter fans will be happy to know that yes, you do participate in the Triwizard Cup tournament or whatever. The Triwizard tournament is basically a 3-task tournament where a group of wizards that have been hand selected by each school by the Goblet of Fire, because apparently the Goblet of Fire has its own will. I don't even know how that works. They don't even explain it. I don't think they explain it. They kind of explain it. I don't know. I've only watched the movie once. So the Goblet of Fire selects a group of wizards to participate in the tournament. One of them is an extra wizard, which would happen to be none other than Harry Potter. Wow, who would have thought? So predictable. The movie explains why it happens. I'm not going to go into detail and spoil it. So basically, as you progress through the levels, you participate in these tasks known as the Triwizard tasks. Because duh, it's a Harry Potter game. It's supposed to match the movie. And the first task is really cool. You get to ride on a broomstick. What? Yes, you heard me. You ride on a broomstick. And for Harry Potter fans, that is a norm. And it's not just any broomstick. This broomstick is known as Harry Potter's Firebolt. Harry Potter is able to ride on this broomstick with his wizardry. And he basically is supposed to collect this golden egg by the end of the level. But he's being chased by a dragon. This level is actually cool because it's probably one of the fastest levels in the game where you actually get to ride in the sky with the broomstick. What I like about this level is that it actually challenges you to beat the level at a certain speed. Basically, depending on how fast you complete the level, you're awarded one of the 3 medals. You get either bronze, silver, or gold. If you get gold right off the bat, which is probably impossible because that level is kind of hard, I would say. If you get gold right off the bat, you get all 3 shields. But if you only get bronze, you only get 1 shield. If you get silver, after that, you get the other shield. And if you get gold finally, then you get the last shield. This concept applies for the other 2 tasks, or the other 2 levels.
The gillyweed! Light, yeah!
Oh, great heavens!
Okay, so the next task involves you having to swim underwater, where you see all these weird looking sirens and terrible looking mermaids and whatever. And your goal is to save one of your friends. Underwater, of all places. The third task is a maze that you have to go through and avoid getting eaten by all the bushes that are around you or something like that. The goal of the maze level is to run around the maze. That's it. You just run around the maze, you keep going forward, you have to avoid branches because they're basically living and they're trying to hurt you. And you also have to avoid the bushes that block your path. And what's cool about this is that we get introduced to Cedric Diggory, who's from the movie Goblet of Fire. But you basically have to save Cedric Diggory. You have to save Cedric from you have to say at the end of the level you approach Cedric I still can't say it. Let's just call him Cedric for now. At the end of the level, Cedric is captured by bushes, which are living. So Harry Potter has to go and save him. And right after you save him, you basically end up in another dimension where you meet Voldemort. And then you fight Voldemort, and then you win, and then you beat him, and then you win the game. And then that's it. That's the game. That's it. Overall, I give the game a nice 3.5 out of 5. It's not bad. The game is an enjoyable run because it combines the feeling of it being nostalgia from 2005, even though I never really was a Harry Potter fan. But I guess the simplicity of it is also kind of nice too. And for it being one of my few Harry Potter games that I played, because I played the Sorcerer's Stone on the PS1 before, it's not bad. It's an enjoyable game to run through if you just want to burn a game through. But there's still more to talk about.
Ronald Weasley.
So aside from the game being alright, I think the gameplay isn't terrible. I don't really have a real opinion on the gameplay. It doesn't really affect my overall opinion of the game. But it's not the most fleshed out either. Remember when I spoke about the first 3 spells that you learn at the beginning of the game, which are the Jinx spell, Wingardium Leviosa, and Accio? Well, that's it. You only use the Jinx spell to attack, and that's your only attack. It's literally just mashing the same button just to do the same spell. It's very basic. And so you do use the other spells like Wingardium Leviosa and Accio, but it's only in specific instances where you actually need to use those spells. Wingardium Leviosa is really useful for picking up objects and also to pick up blocks to climb on to be able to get to certain platforms. You can also use Wingardium Leviosa to throw enemies or throw enemies at each other. And there's other applications for Wingardium Leviosa as well. And then there are certain moments when you will actually use Accio to be able to lift objects from above you to be able to pull them towards you. Usually those objects will probably be like health items that will give you more stamina, and stamina being your health technically. Now there's 3 more spells that you actually pick up throughout the game, aside from the basic ones that you learn at the beginning, which are Carpe Retractum, Aqua Eructo, and Herbificus. There was actually one that I didn't know about until I did some research, because I had been actually using it throughout the game, but I didn't even realize it. It was Carpe Retractum. But it isn't often that you would be using the spell, so that's why I just didn't even realize that it was even a thing. I mean, I still used it, I just didn't feel like I used it a lot, but I don't know. Maybe I just didn't pay attention. Actually, never mind. I did realize that you do use the spell a lot, especially against these weird looking things. These creatures are called bubotubers. I think I said that right. And it allows you to catapult them into an area where there's fungus or fungi. Fungus. So Carpe Retractum is actually used to slingshot these enemies at them. At the fungus. I mean, okay, whatever. And then with Aqua Erupto, it allows you to cast a water spell on enemies and also to put out fires. And then with Herbivicus, that spell allows you to basically grow lily pads and also flowers. The lily pads allow you to cross certain areas where there's usually a body of water that you can't cross. There are more spells, but they really only exist in the Nintendo DS and Game Boy Advance versions, which is kind of weird that there are more spells in the handheld games. Anyway, even though this is probably the most simplistic moveset that you have, you can at least upgrade your spells and enhance your Jinx spell attack. The way that you can do this is by buying these cards. I don't really know what they are. You can buy these cards with beans. Literally, you use beans as currency to buy and enhance your skills. You can collect these beans by killing enemies or collecting them on the ground. And a nice feature about this game is that you don't only have to play as Harry Potter, you can also play as Ron Weasley and Hermione. Each time you select a level to go into, you have to select one of the characters. And then depending on the character that you select, the other 2 companions will join you. But what's cool about this is that depending on how many beans each character collects, because the other 2 characters can actually collect beans on their own, they can use those beans to enhance their skills and buy the cards. And each character has different attack type Jinx spells, so there's a little bit of variety there, at least. So from a gameplay perspective, it's not the worst system, but it's not the best either, I would say. And it's really because of how buff some of the enemies are. The most annoying enemies in this game are the Vampire Moss, the Salamanders, and the Urklings.
Ew. Oh, great heavens!
And the reason why they're so annoying is that it's not that easy to stagger enemies in this game. And if you have multiple of these enemies in the same area, unless they're targeting the other 2 friends that you're with, you're going to end up getting attacked, and sometimes they stop on you, and then it's so easy for your stamina to just deplete and die. For example, in one of the levels, you encounter a lot of Urklings, and they're annoying to deal with. And unless you're constantly dodging all their attacks and trying to attack without getting hit, it's really hard a little bit. And if you ever go against a salamander in the game, and there's multiple of them, let's say, if you're trying to use Aqua Erupto, it forces your character to stay in the same position and be stationary. So you have to be able to simultaneously use that spell and be able to dodge their fire bursts. But if you have another enemy on you, then it's really hard to just focus on one target. It's just a matter of kind of adapting to these situations. Also, there is a buff spell that I didn't mention. It's called Magicus Extremis. And that spell basically buffs your Jinx spell. So if you have a lot of enemies in one area and you need to kill them, then you can activate Magicus Extremis. But that's based on how much the meter of that spell is filled. So until you can fill it up again, you can't use it. Also, once you use Magicus Extremis, it essentially buffs the other 2 people on your team. And this is really useful in situations and scenarios where you're fighting a lot of people and you just want to end the fight quicker. Well, not people, but creatures. And since we're on the topic of fighting, you don't really fight any bosses in this game. I mean, you do fight Voldemort, but it's not really you fighting him. You fight the skeletons that he summons, and that's pretty much it. I mean, they kind of did have boss fights like in the Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone game for the PS1. So if that's the case, why didn't they decide to draw from that in this game? Another thing I want to note is that you do fight these two giant turd looking things at the end of the maze level for the third task, the same level that I talked about earlier. So with that, you can kind of view this as the boss part of the level. So if they could come up with something like that, why can't they get a little bit more creative with the other levels? And on top of that, since we're on the same topic of criticizing, the worst level in this game for me, and it's the one of the 3 tasks that you have to participate in, the worst level out of those 3 tasks is the one that you have to go underwater, because it is so slow. It's not fun. There's nothing fun about this level. This level is stupid. I understand that they're trying to emulate the movie, but this level is still stupid. I hate it. And I'm just biased about it because all you do is really swim through a linear path. At least the level where you're just flying with the broomstick is more entertaining. And on top of that, you got to deal with these freaking... I honestly don't really know where to start here. If you don't have a sense of humor like mine, then I'm not sure that you're going to be able to experience some of the nuances of this game. Because aside from what I just explained about the overall game and the gameplay and whatever else that I talked about, this game just has a lot of funny moments where it doesn't feel like it's trying to be funny, but it catches itself off guard. What I'm trying to say is that there's a certain humor to this game as you keep playing it. And I don't know if the developers try to make it this way or they knew that their finished product was like this, but allow me to further explain. That footage isn't my own, but it's nice to know that I'm not the only one that experiences stuff like this in this game. Because similar stuff like that has happened to me in this game. There are times that I would just burst out laughing because there's potential for glitches to happen and it's just funny. Like, you wouldn't expect that from a game like Harry Potter. So since I don't have the footage for this, I'll try my best to explain this as much as I can. I had a lot of moments where my companions, whether I was playing as Harry Potter and the other two were Hermione and Ron, I would have moments where Hermione would just break. In one of the levels, Herbology, there's a little staircase that you climb to get to the top of a little structure. And as I started to go down that structure, down the stairs, Hermione's just running backwards. And I don't know why. It's just funny to look at. And usually the characters follow you wherever you go. In one instance, Hermione just got stuck trying to turn around a corner. I'm not sure if I had to restart the level or not just for her to go back to normal. And usually Ron will help you out if you're trying to cast a spell on the drawbridge and pull it down. And there are times when Ron just decides not to help you out and just stays there. He doesn't cast a spell with you like he's supposed to. You almost have to like kind of wiggle in and out of the spell. I mean, this doesn't just happen with Ron, it happens with the other characters, but in my experience, it mostly happened with Ron. But it can happen with other characters. Luckily, I was able to find a bit of footage that describes what I'm talking about.
Harry, I need your help! Okay.
There was another time that I did the first task for the Tri-Wizard Cup, and it was the same level where I'm riding the broomstick and it's with the dragon. And towards the end of the level, when you basically escape from the dragon, a literal split second after I died, I finished the level. Notice how the dragon is at that cutscene where you beat the level. Well, imagine if the dragon wasn't there. That's basically what happened. I'm not going to try to recreate it because it happened in that moment and it might be hard to do for me to recreate that. But basically there was no dragon at the end cutscene just because I died right before I finished that level, right before I got to the end, a split second before I got to the end of that level. The dragon wasn't even there. It played the cutscene without the dragon. And I'm not saying this to poop on the game. I think it just adds to the humor of it. Another feature that I think is funny is related to the fact that when you buy cards, you know, the same cards that I spoke about that enhance your skills and your spells and whatever. Well, those cards show a picture of something from a Harry Potter movie, right? So a certain cutscene in a still frame. And the picture in those cards almost never have anything to do with the context of the spell enhancement that you get. Like, let's say you get like stamina plus 10 or accio plus 10. The card ends up being just some random cutscene from one of the Harry Potter movies. And I don't know, there's just something funny about that. Because they're treating the cards like it's some collector's piece. Like one of those card collecting binders that you would get in school. And like you get a certain athlete to put in that binder or something related to whatever sport. And I don't know, just something about that is a little funny to me. Now, at one point in the game, when you do arrive to the maze level, which is one of the Triwizard tasks that I mentioned earlier, you end up coming across a guy named Victorcrum. But you don't know who that is at all. You don't know that this is the guy named Victorcrum because the game doesn't tell you that this is Victorcrum. In fact, you would only know that this is Victorcrum if you watch the movie. This character Victorcrum only appears once in the game, and it's in this very cutscene. But unless you watch the movie, you wouldn't know who that is. The game doesn't really touch on who this person is. Victorcrum is one of the participants in the Triwizard Cup if you watch the movie. And so that's why he's there in the maze with Harry Potter and Cedric. The storytelling in this game is so advanced. It's phenomenal. My word. Like any person who plays this game and has never watched Goblet of Fire would just think to themselves, wow, it's just some random white bald dude that just came out of nowhere. Now going back to Cedric, the guy in the yellow and black shirt, who was also in the movie Twilight, he's one of the other Triwizard Cup participants. So that's the reason why he's in this level in the first place, because he's participating in the cup with Harry Potter. And towards the end of the level, Cedric gets trapped by the bushes and he's captured. And as soon as Harry Potter rescues Cedric, after that level, when you fight Voldemort, as soon as you beat Voldemort, Cedric just comes out of nowhere. And this is a bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want to watch this, and you can skip this part. Basically, Cedric dies in the movie because Voldemort, or more so his lackey, the guy who was once a rat, Ron's rat, and turned into a human or whatever, that guy kills Cedric in the movie. There's also a cutscene in the game that kind of shows Cedric dying, but it doesn't really show it explicitly. But anyway, Cedric dies at the beginning of the fight with Voldemort. Right before Harry Potter's about to fight with Voldemort, he dies.
Cedric, get back to the cup. Now!
I'm not leaving you.
Kill the spare.
No! Avada Kedavra!
So Harry fights Voldemort, beats him.
Oh, great heavens!
And then Cedric just comes out of nowhere. Like his ghost just comes out of nowhere, completely out of context. There's nothing that prompts Cedric's ghost form here at all. In the movie, it makes sense. In the game, it doesn't make sense. Because in the movie, he does come out in his ghost form, but there's a particular reason why he does in the first place. But in the game, they don't explain that at all. It just comes out of nowhere with some wizardry nonsense. And towards the end of that cutscene where you beat Voldemort, he just kind of eats himself into the frame.
Oh, great heavens!
And then he keeps repeatedly making these funny noises.
Oh, great heavens!
In conclusion, I did like this game. And after playing this game, it actually inspired me to watch Goblet of Fire, which I really enjoyed. Something that I wouldn't have enjoyed earlier on in my life. And so Harry Potter gets my stamp of approval. There are other aspects of the game that I neglected to mention, such as the extra challenges that are in the game. They're called Moody's challenges. And the cards that you can buy to have an advantage against certain enemies. But, I mean, who cares?